I came from Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania.
Well, I actually lived in Los Angeles for almost 40 years.
I was born and raised in D.C.
I moved to the farms at the end of March.
And we moved here in 2001.
Since '94.
The early 70s.
I am a senior citizen. I've been here 35 years.
We are very close to major employment centers, Chantilly, Dulles, Herndon.
We're approximately, I'd say, 60 plus miles from Washington, D.C., west of Washington, D.C., 17 miles east of Winchester, Virginia, and 21 miles kind of north of Front Royal, Virginia.
I think we're over 3,000 acres, if I'm not mistaken. We're the second largest subdivision in the state. Many of the people with blue-collar jobs find it necessary to live this far away from DC. We are definitely a commuter community. It's becoming increasingly not difficult to make your living locally also. Winchester is growing, Front Royal is growing.
You know, to come home here, even from the big city of Winchester, where I work, is just a wonderful relief from the outside world. This is the inside world for sure. And we're actually in heaven, if you ask me, having grown up in the South Bronx.
Well, the history guy, I did some research into that, and I had a friend that lived right here off of Manor Lane, which is right across from us right there. And he would plant a garden every year, and whenever he'd go out and till up his garden, he found buckets full of Indian artifacts, you know, everything from arrowheads to mortise and pestles and you know, hatchet handles and stuff. And we have no idea how far that goes back, but we know that at one point that there was a pretty active Native American community in this area. I'm sure the river was part of that.
My understanding is the tribe was called the Shenandoah, from which we get the name Shenandoah on the river. We did do an unofficial dig down along some of the riverfront property close to here, and we went down about 6 feet and found evidence of campfires, some of which we intend to get carbon dated, and that just gives you some indication of how much the river has silted up the banks. I mean, 6 feet of earth, and we didn't go all the way down. We don't know how much deeper that might have gone, but obviously this area has been inhabited by humans for quite some time, probably far longer than we're even aware of.
And there are old legends and things that go back to this. In fact, when you come down Howesville Road, there's a big rock in the river, a huge rock, and that has supposedly rolled off the top of the mountain at one point and rolled over an Indian chief on his white horse, and that is called White Horse Rock. So because of that, I don't know how much truth there is into that.
There is a marker in somebody's front yard right off of Howesville Road that George Washington did some surveying around here.
Over the years, I've talked to people that have found Civil War relics. There was a person that was doing some work on his driveway, dug up a Civil War cannon out of his yard.
One of our road names is Mosby's Meadow Lane. Mosby's Raiders were part of the Confederate entourage in this area. He was quite famous. He became a lawyer in DC after the war, but he was quite active, a guerrilla fighter, really.
Back here on Shenandoah River Lane, there is the still part of the foundation of a building that was used as a Civil War hospital. And so there are several things, you know, there are still like family cemeteries and things within, on properties in the farms. There's a mausoleum just up the road here that you can see off of Houseville Road that goes back into the either late 1700s or early 1800s.
My understanding is that Robert Young, who was a senator, bought some land out this way and then began selling lots out of the trunk of his car right along Howellsville Road in the early days.
It's a very rural community that was originally started as a recreational community. I guess that was the vision back in those days for hunting and camping kinds of things, people that wanted to use the river. And it's basically become a bedroom community for the DC area now.
It was created as a recreational community for summer homes, and people could come up here and build a getaway cabin for the weekend type of place. And it had some great amenities. It had a good sized swimming, it had 2 swimming pools. So you could purchase a lot here and use the amenities. There was a riding stable, the swimming pools, the river access. And that's the way this place was marketed.
And it was primarily vacation property back then. People would come out for the weekends and so forth and so on and enjoy the amenities and just enjoy some time in the woods. I would say John Flynn, his son-in-law, was really the prime mover at that point. He was to be found on site often, and his wife Judy, Senator Young's daughter. They had a full-time sales staff. A name Butch Dillard comes to mind, but I don't believe I ever met him. But there were some of the early salespeople.
You could buy a lot for a couple of $1,000s. They would finance them, $25 down, $10 a month. And depending on when you purchased, your deeded lot fee varied in cost. Some people had a 0 deeded lot fee. Others were $15, $20, up to $50.
Just stories I've heard, like them giving out, if you come to take a look at a lot, you get a free turkey. I remember, sorry I missed that day actually. That was about probably the late 60s or early 70s.
Gradually they took over or bought more of the tracts in the area and subdivided those. Okay, now now we enter some of what you might call some of the dark days of the farms. In the early 70s, right around 73, we experienced the gas crisis, and the subdivision began to suffer from people not coming out quite as frequently to purchase lots out here. We had gas lines and so forth and so on.
There were some title problems. I hear that the way they did business, they didn't really get it all right in terms of filing, deeds and title searches and things like that.
The fees for the lots were not equitable. It was $50 for one person and 15 for another one, and 0 in my case on my deed.
The original lot fees were $15, no more than $50 a lot. They were tied to the deeds. They would never go up. My understanding is that Robert Young, upon occasion, might say, and if you buy today, we'll waive the annual lot fee, so that there was no enforceable mechanism in place to maintain the roads and the facilities.
When Flynn first developed this, as long as they were selling properties, they were maintaining everything. When they sold the last properties, there was no more money for maintenance anymore, so things started going downhill pretty quickly, and all the facilities, the pools, they were not able to maintain them, and everything just fell into disrepair.
Now here's the issue. This whole community was supposed to be maintained on deeded lot fees, which could never be increased. So if you took an average of, say, $20 for a deeded lot fee to maintain 43 miles of roads, was kind of a dead-end situation then.
Originally, when the fellow that developed this area had a really good vision, but he didn't provide for financing of maintaining the facilities he built.
Shenandoah Farms was a subdivision that was essentially created on paper, where you had a surveyor that laid out the lots and they came in and put in the roads. Today, you would come in and you'd have an engineer design the roads and then do the lot layout. So it's kind of reversed in the way that normally we would do that today. So it makes it much more difficult because you're chasing your tail and you're trying to fix infrastructure issues and problems.
The basic issue down here was, in a nutshell, there was no money to maintain the infrastructure of this community. And when the roads deteriorated and people abandoned their houses, okay, their summer cabins, then some people started moving in and squatting in these buildings. People that didn't want to be found.
And I think it was probably back in '96, if my memory serves me well, that we had this big 3-foot snowstorm throughout the county. And after the snowstorm, we had this rapid melting and so forth, if you will. So I jumped right into the flooding of the river and the destruction of a lot of the roads and so forth in the farms.
When we first moved here, Shenandoah Farm was pretty much in disarray. It was a recreational community which had fallen apart.
The community just went to seed, basically. Roads weren't maintained, tree branches weren't cut. The fire department used to complain about antennas, lights, and mirrors being broke off fire apparatus. People started to abandon their properties.
If you didn't pay your lot fees, eventually, I suppose, you could have been taken to court. But at $15 a lot per year on some of the very early lots, even if you had been, the economics weren't there for prosecuting any of that, even if the will had been. So the roads fell into further disarray and unimprovement. And in some ways, it kind of became the wild, wild west.
When I first moved in here, this was a pretty rough area. In fact, some of the folks in town referred to Shenandoah Farms as the wild, wild west. We had a lot of drugs and outlaw bike gangs and things like that.
Back in the day, before sanitary district, the lakes were a hot spot of illegal activities, drugs, prostitution, etc. All that's been cleaned up since we went into the sanitary district in 1995.
The sheriff's department didn't want to have to send their cruisers over the roads, from what we understand. And one sheriff was quoted as saying, I'm not sending my cruisers up in there. So it became a haven for people who might have been somewhat nefarious.
And we called the sheriff's department trying to get a hold on the drug issues and those kinds of things. And the sheriff at that point, he's been gone for a long time, told us, he said, if you think I'm going to bring my cruisers up those creek beds you call roads, you're out of your mind. And so we couldn't even get police protection.
When I first came here, the sheriff would not send vehicles up here because they would get tore up. You go back and talk to the sheriff in the early days out here, street signs were stolen so that people could not be found. So up on Jones Quadrangle, there was a motorcycle gang had an area up there. The sheriff wouldn't even go up there.
There was no money to do anything. The lakes, the river lots were in bad shape. And then Joe Longo, bless his heart, they hired Joe, and on a very limited income, Joe started trying to improve the lots.
When the community started going downhill, several residents started the idea of forming a sanitary district to get more revenue in here to maintain this beautiful area.
The Of course, the major thing that happened in the farms was the implementation of the sanitary district. For once, the board here at POSF had the financial resources to really make a difference in the community.
Basically, a sanitary district is a special taxing district for a specific purpose as set out in the court order that created it. And for Shenandoah Farms, it's pretty much for road maintenance. And when you think about it, you've got, I think, a little over 42 miles of private roads in this subdivision, which is much more than a lot of localities, small towns and cities. So it's its own little local government out here in Hallsville.
There was some really brave people that went after the idea of the sanitary district. Kathleen George and her husband Dwight, Don Hoover and his wife. I think Mr. and Mrs. Moriarty were involved in it. And the Averys, Kate Avery was involved in it. And they led the way. And there was a big argument down here as to, some people wanted it and some people didn't. It was definitely, I call those folks pioneers of Shenandoah Farms because they really, they put it out there. And they got criticized, they got threatened, the whole bit.
The people that were opposed to it didn't bring up issues. They just didn't want to do it. And their biggest concern was that they felt like it was the government stepping in and having more to say about where they live and what they do with their money.
At first, we were fearful what might happen once the county took over, but that is actually proven to be a real boon.
When the county first took over the roads, I was a little upset about it. But from seeing what they're doing and the quality of work they're doing, the roads are turned over to the state system once they finish them. I used to live on 2 dirt roads where I couldn't sit on my front porch for the dust, and now I can enjoy the luxury of sitting on 2 paved roads.
Sanitary district got funding assistance to repair roads and do those kind of things because the sanitary district is considered part of the county government. At the time, of course, a lot of the citizens didn't understand that, so we actually brought some state people out here to meet with the citizens of the community to explain that was one major benefit of being a sanitary district.
Essentially, this community was not a full-time, year-round live-in community. It was a vacation destination. That's at least what I hear. So the roads, when they started out, were all just dirt roads. There was no real attempt to make a good roadway system in Warren County or Clark.
There were roads that were impassable to some of our bigger trucks, all right, during normal times. So you can imagine what they were when you got a couple inches of rain or just a thunderstorm coming through, with gullies and washouts and so forth. And what that does is it extends response times. With the amount of roads that are here in the farms and the amount of houses and so forth and customers that we have to serve, that's response times is not extending response times is not a good thing. Confident enough to say this, that it was 15-minute response times to the top of the mountain. Sometimes the roads were so bad you had to reroute and go other ways and so forth. And really, to be honest, luckily we had other routes we could take, but again, it adds to the response times.
Once the sanitary district was formed, the lot fees were established by the Shenandoah Farms Board and the County Board of Supervisors. The county could collect those fees for, I think, about 4% of the fees. They took over all the collection and unpaid fees. It became then actionable under county law to sell lots with unpaid fees that went on over a significant period of time, so that it became, in essence, a tax, which some people object to if you want to form a sanitary district, but it became absolutely necessary from the standpoint of bringing up the quality of life on the farms and giving people access to their properties. And we've been making progress ever since.
Now, my understanding is that sanitary districts are run by county board of supervisors, but they just take a small 2 or 3% fee to administrate the funds so that the sanitary district manager uses 97% of the money on the work to be done in the farms.
The county, the board of supervisors, which are my boss, basically by the court order are in charge of the sanitary district. And the way Warren County has worked its sanitary districts over the years, initially we were contracting back with POSF to run the day-to-day operations. So the county basically collected the sanitary district tax and remitted the funding over to POSF to perform the actual duties.
Sanitary district gives us so much more than what you really understand. They give us a relationship with the county. They give us good roads. They give us access to information that we need. They give us somebody who is a liaison with us. And we are actually an advisory board to the county. And that's part of the historical relationship that we have with Warren County.
One of the great benefits about the sanitary district is that the county collects those taxes along with one's real estate taxes. And it relieves the homeowners association from the burden of going after their neighbors to collect HOA fees, the burden of having to place liens on properties against your neighbors. So I think, especially in a place like Shenandoah Farms, where you have a lot of absentee, out-of-state lot owners, it gets real tough to be able to collect that money. So I think one of the things that the sanitary district has really been able to do since 1996 is provide some stability and additional revenue for the residents out here to be able to improve the infrastructure.
The residents voted to join the sanitary district, which is a bit of a misnomer. It has nothing to do with water. It has absolutely nothing to do with sewer. It's rather unfortunate that it's called that because people assume in the process of trying to set up another sanitary district, were you to choose to do so, that it involves those sorts of expenses and so forth and so on, and that's not true at all.
No one is going to come in here and squat in a house if the sheriff is going to come up and say, you can't be here. No one's going to abandon their property if the infrastructure is correct.
Contractors really started buying and building and selling homes, and the home prices started going up, and so we started becoming more and more of a bedroom community.
The sanitary district, like I said, has been the salvation of Shenandoah Farms. Treasure Island is, I think, one of the best recreation areas in the world. And
Well, Treasure Island is my favorite place to take the dogs, especially early in the morning on weekdays. There's nobody there. It's just a beautiful spot, you know, short hikes. The dogs love it. You know, it gives you a view of the Shenandoah River that you don't really get from anywhere else.
Treasure Island, we actually made Treasure Island. Treasure Island was all woods. And Junior Sipe, who did all the road work here and all the clearing work for years and years here in the farms, went down there and cleared that area down there. And like I say, with that river bottom dirt, the lawn just came in naturally, and it's absolutely beautiful. We have swings down there, we have picnic tables, we have grills down there, we have climbing bars for the kids, you know, a lot of stuff. Access to the river, access to the island itself.
We've got a park for the kids down on this side of the river, not out on the island itself for the kids. And it's a nice picnic site. You can go out there, we keep it mowed and everything.
The Treasure Island common property was developed by POSF about 15 years ago. It used to just be a wooded area down there. If you go further back into the wooded area of Treasure Island, there's like a little gravel bar type of beach that people use.
We have sort of a relationship with Treasure Island. We had a dog that passed away a couple of years ago, And he was very fond of going down with my husband in the truck to Treasure Island just to run around.
There's also two river access points, one off Shenandoah River Lane and one off of Farms View and another one off of Farms River View. We maintain those. There's a brand new river access that was put in by the state of Virginia down on Farms River View. And we combined one of our common properties with that for a park setting.
I think probably the main appeal out here is the river. We have the river runs along several miles of the community, and people come from all over the place to come out here and enjoy the river, do floats or canoeing or kayaking or fishing and those kinds of things, and that was certainly an appeal to me. But there's also some really great hiking. I like to take my bike out and ride, do some mountain biking and those kinds of things, it's those kinds of recreational things. There are still some areas where you can do camping.
My wife gets on a rubber raft off Treasure Island, and I pick her up down at the Shenandoah River Lane. It's about 3 miles by water. That's what she does for fun, is paddle on that. There's nobody on the river usually, and just has it all to herself. So
I like the river access down below Myers Drive. It's nice down there. The county has improved it quite a bit. It's a decent place to go. That's my favorite place.
It's just the kind of community that makes it accessible to all of us.
One of my favorite things when I was property manager to do was to go down and work along the river, because there we have eagles nesting along the river, and you can go down and watch them fish, and you can, there's beavers in the river, and there's a lot of wildlife in the area.
I think there are coyotes here. We have a rabbit family that lives in front of my house.
Our family does a lot of fishing and hunting, so to go down to the common grounds and learn that was part of the benefits of living here on the farm, it was a plus for actually being here.
I guess game and fisheries do stock fish in the river, and there's muskie and pike, and this was one of the rated, I don't know if it still is, one of the best smallmouth bass streams in the country at one time. We have 2 lakes. One is Spring Lake. It's probably about 4 acres. And we have Lake of the Clouds, which is probably 8 or 9 acres. And both of them have been there for probably 50 years, 40, 50 years. And so they're well stocked with fish, and it's a good place. We have docks at both of those lakes, and they're nice, clean, facilities where we have playground equipment and things like that. We have the areas around the community center here on the other side of Jim's Country Store over there. We have our basketball courts for the kids.
The county, we sincerely appreciate the collaborative relationship that we've developed with the POSF board. I think we both have the same vision in mind as far as, creating a better community out here. That's part of my job as county administrator, is to help work with the community, to build community and a better quality of life. And it takes sometimes, it's kind of a public-private partnership here, from working with their HOA board, POA board, collaboratively to identify needs, find a way to pay for them, and get them completed.
If I could tell the residents why it's important to be part of the board or part of the community, I can even say that you have board members that listen. They can work out problems that you might have, and on the other hand, they can give you resources to complete things that you would like to have as part of the community.
We all have one vote, except there's 300 million of us. So I don't know how much power that one vote gives us, but here in the farms, being part of the community, I don't want to say government, but part of the community organization, we make decisions on, should we repair the band shell over there? We want to have concerts. You have more say as a board member than any other way I participate in government.
I chose to be on the board because every community that I've ever lived in, I've never really had a voice. Being on the board is a privilege. I am retired and I need to know what the roads are like, what happens in a storm, evacuations, and entities like that.
I don't always win on the issues that come up, but I get a hearing. And sometimes my side does win, depending on what the issue is. So you feel like you have some control over where you live.
Most people complain about things without ever doing anything about it. They complain about the people who are running the country and don't vote, and those kinds of things. So one of the first things I did when I came here was I came to the meetings, go to the different things that I'm interested in. I've acted as a board member for Arts Council. You can either be a part of the problem or you can be a part of the solution. And I feel it's always better to be a part of the solution.
I want to participate in the community. I live here. I like the people here. They're friendly. And we could use more help when we have activities and all, but it's hard because people are busy and things.
We sponsor events year-round that really hundreds of people show up at, and we can always use more help in creating those events and working at those events.
Well, to meet people, to help your community out, to help improve it, to think of things to get people to come here, different activities like.
We're a good group. I think that I could call anybody on the board if I needed help, and they would be more than happy to help me out.
I just like to know what's going on. I enjoy knowing my neighbors. I know a lot of us leave early and come back late, and I know that the last thing you want to do when you get home or on a weekend is leave to go anywhere, knowing that you're going to be on the road possibly 5 days a week for the rest of the week. But to know what's going on, to get to know some of the other people that live in your community, and possibly form alliances to whatever end, being able to rely on your neighbors to help cut your grass when you might be away on vacation or whatever it happens to be. It's just been a wonderful opportunity for me to be connected and to have an idea of what's happening on the farms.
I'm going to tell you one thing. To believe in something takes effort, okay? To believe in something takes work. If you want to believe in your community, come join us. Come get involved. The rewards are great. You'll be informed. You'll be part of a voice for this community. That's what I would, right? So just remember, disbelief is easy because you don't have to do anything, but to believe in something takes effort.
This is your community, and you're responsible to it. So come on out and help us.